So the term incorporation by reference is an arcane and it's a seemingly inconsequential phrase, but hiding behind it is a major issue, and that is the issue of public access to the law. We take for granted in American democracy that citizens are entitled to know the law and that we don't have secret laws. This goes back centuries. An ordinary citizen can easily read any of our federal statutes in the US Code, and the vast majority of our federal regulations in the Code of Federal Regulation or in the Federal Register online or by visiting one of our now 1,100 government depository libraries nationwide. And that has been our system, one of widespread public access to the text of the law since about 1795. But for roughly 9,500 federal regulations, that isn't true. They are not secret by design, but an ordinary citizen may have to pay a substantial fee to see them, and they may be very difficult to locate. As a result, the substance of these legal requirements is effectively hidden, and that is the problem of incorporation by reference. So how did we get here? Normally, a federal agency, say the Transportation Department or the Department of Health and Human Services, issues its own requirements for environmental protection, say, or Medicare eligibility. But for these thousands of regulations, the federal agency has decided to do something different, and that is to use a privately drafted standard to make up the content of the federal rule. These standards are written by organizations ranging from the American Society of Automotive Engineers and the American Public Health Association to the American Petroleum Institute. And they cover a wide range of topics, including environmental standards for oil pipelines, offshore drilling platforms, toy safety standards, infant product safety standards, and drinking water standards. Unlike other federal regulations, the text of these requirements doesn't just appear in the Code of Federal Regulations. Instead, you open up the Code of Federal Regulations and it says something like this: we hereby require all pipeline operators to comply with American Petroleum Institute Standard 1192, which is incorporated by reference. And that governs what you tell the community or first responders if there is an oil spill. If you want to see the text of the American Petroleum Institute Standard 1192, contact the American Petroleum Institute. So a citizen that wants to see the text of this law first has to find that standard. This can be difficult since there are literally thousands of these standards strewn across hundreds of privately operated websites, each of which is organized differently. And even more significantly, it is up to that private group to decide how much to charge you to read the text. The price could be zero, but it also could be upwards of $1,000 to see a single standard. The incorporated safety standard for infant carriers is $43, but the current edition of the Food Chemical Codex, which the FDA has incorporated by reference into its food additive standards, is $499. A complete set of standards for the Pipeline Safety Act is nearly $10,000. These private organizations do not have any obligation to make a standard available at any particular price, and some standards, especially older ones, are simply unavailable from the private organization at any price. Once in a while, when a federal agency chooses a private standard to incorporate into federal regulations, the organization actually raises the price. The only alternative is that an agency incorporating a standard by reference is required to provide a copy to the Office of the Federal Register, which keeps it on file. But to see that copy, you have to make an appointment, often days in advance, with that office and physically travel to Washington, D.C. That is just not going to be a viable option for the vast majority of American citizens. That means recourse is to the private organization, and we get whatever access to the text of that standard the private organization decides to provide.